Hello.
Hello.
Happy Friday, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah. And there's a dog trying to get underneath my desk.
Yep, already.
It was like 2 minutes. 2 minutes I've been live. Yeah, you might notice that Danielle's AWOL again. Very naughty.
I think she has been abducted this time.
Yeah, she's definitely been abducted.
In a while.
Hopefully, she will be back next week. She had the commitments this week, unfortunately. Getting used to the Friday. Because she'd scheduled her whole life to do Tuesdays, and you wanted Friday, so it's all your fault. It's all your fault that Danielle's been abducted. And before we go any further, yes, my eye is a bit red. I've got eczema. Eczema?
Whatever way you say it.
I've got something on my eyelid, and it looks like I've been crying, but I've not been crying. So, yeah, if you're watching on a podcast, you know what I'm talking about. But you're not watching on a podcast, are you? You're listening. I'm going to shut up now.
Something wrong if that's
right,
okay.
This episode, it's not really... It didn't fit into a Curious Casefiles, and it didn't fit into a Journey Down the Rabbit Hole, so I'm going to call it a Journey Down the Rabbit Hole, but I might change the name of it later. It's basically mini mysteries. It was like... There was loads of little stories that weren't enough for a whole episode, but Journey Down the Rabbit Hole is like really bizarre questions. So we called it this, but it's like lots of little mini case files. I don't know what to call it.
Mini curiosities. No.
Mini mysteries.
Yeah.
I've got quite
Mini
a few
mysteries.
here. I don't know if we'll get through them all. If not, we'll do them again at a later date. But there weren't enough for a full episode. And if I'd just done one and it'd been a 20-minute show, I can imagine Bob moaning, phoning me up, like, oh, is that? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're going to do a couple. And hello to Kelly. Hello, Expialidocious.
And hello everyone else.
Hello, Bob, and hello everyone else who watches later. This is, if you are watching later, this is the 15th of September. September already. It'll soon be Halloween.
It's time's gone on.
Yeah, and I'm going to start, before we get into the mini mysteries, kind of a mini mystery, but it's also in the news.
Oh, he's here.
Oh, there he is.
Bear, he's here.
Talk of the devil. Yeah. This was in the news, and I'm going to talk about it because it's weird. And I'm going to share my screen before we go on to the first mini mystery. Is that what I'm going to call it? Mini mysteries?
Yeah, mini mysteries. Mini holes. Rabbit holes, though.
Mini holes.
Yeah,
no, we're not going to call it mini holes. Right, so, yeah. 1,000-year-old alien corpses displayed in glass cases in Mexico, and this Yoda-looking thing.
Yoda? You think Yoda?
So, a UFO enthusiast testified under oath that almost a third of the mummified specimen's DNA was unknown, and they were not part of our terrestrial evolution. 2 alleged non-human alien corpses have been shown to Mexican politicians. The mummified specimens were displayed in a glass case as part of an official unveiling at Mexico's Congress in a hearing which has stirred excitement among UFO, and it's got in brackets, just in case you don't know what that means, unidentified flying object enthusiasts. Politicians were told they were found in the city of Cusco, Peru, and were estimated to be about 1,000 years old. The Mexico event was spearheaded by journalist and UFO researcher Jaime, that's how you say it, Jaime Muson, who testified under oath that almost a third of their DNA is unknown and the specimens were not part of our terrestrial evolution. Well, they just said that up there, so why they've repeated that, I have no idea. However, I mean, it is weird. There's a little video, I don't know. I've not played this. I'll play it. No one, because it's not doing anything. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
tal? Muy buenas tardes a todos.
There's no
La
like
técnica de
indication of
extracción
size
y
either.
su posterior
No.
corrimiento en
It
un
looks really
generador
tiny
confirmó
to me,
resistencia
which kind of
tanto
worries
de
me
ADN
slightly.
degradado
Well, talking about
como
really
moléculas
tiny,
You can't even
de
hear what they're
ADN
saying.
no
I don't really care what they're
degradadas
saying. To be
con la
honest.
No.
Probably
posibilidad de poder realizar un proceso fueron los siguientes.
talking in Spanish, I should imagine.
Yeah.
Anyway, the fact that it's Jaime Maussan worries me because I don't know if you know this, but roughly 2015, he'd done this before.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can just share this other tab, I found a picture of the previous one. It's on Twitter, because it's quite difficult to find any articles. And this is what he... It was tiny. This one was really tiny. It was like they big.
Yeah.
And he claimed that was an alien.
And before that, there
But
was
apparently it ended up being a deformed human fetus.
yeah, which was awful. And a couple of years before that, around 2014, I think, he had them little grey aliens that he discovered, and that was just a hoax, wasn't it? He was pissed off himself.
Was that
And disappointed.
all them carvings?
No actual bodies again.
Oh yeah.
And
So
it
he
turned
has
out to be
done
a
this
hoax.
before, and it's turned out to be bullshit.
Mm.
So,
But you never know.
I mean, this was apparently a corpse of a human child, and it's obviously... I mean, even that though, I mean, they said it was a fetus, but then they said that its head was enlarged because of binding. How do you bind a fetus? Like in the womb? I know they bind the baby's
That's weird.
eggs. Whatever, but yeah.
The Nazca mummies, yeah, I think it was the
I think
Nazca
that was
mummies.
the Nazca.
I don't know, I get confused because they get so many of them little stories.
Yeah, them little ones came from Nazca in Peru, and this one apparently comes from Cusco.
Oh.
It's also in Peru, so yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, obviously there's them sort of structures and everything around there, get people puzzled and everything, and he keep trying. I mean, he's come up with a few things. He came up with
even if it is something genuinely unexplained, he's fucked it now, isn't he? Because he's put like a big mark on his name by jumping into things in the past without proper...
He did find one of them cylinders as well, and that was, really unique and strange and things like that. And people couldn't explain that, so he found one of them. And there's been a few of them because someone tried to say it was like a aircraft fuel. The
last time he just went to the media. This time he's actually doing a whole presentation for the Mexican government, so he's made it all official and stuff. But
they said they X-rayed them and the bones, etc., all the wrong way around. Yeah. That's a shame, really. And obviously, when it turns out,
I wish it was somebody else. If it is something like truly bizarre, I wish it was somebody else.
Well, the other problem is when it turns out to be like a disabled infant, it makes everyone feel bad, doesn't it? Because you're like, not only that you're wrong, you're calling it an ET and. I don't know.
Yeah, so
interesting. You never know. We might get there one day.
We'll probably hear more about this because it's been like the media all over the world's been reporting on it the last couple of days because he's obviously presented it to the Mexican government. There was US officials there. They might do further testing, but if the government does testing, do we really trust that?
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
The government,
but we'll see. We'll see how that develops, and we'll keep you informed if anything else crops up.
Circles up. Yeah.
No, Jamie.
No.
Right, for the first mini mystery then. And it is... No, that's a little weird alien. Have you heard of John Decker? Anybody?
No, it sounds like a TV.
You have heard of it because I told you.
Well, apart from that,
So don't pretend
not
you're
the
not.
name. What I was going to say, it sounds like a TV show character or something. Here's Don Decker or a presenter or something.
Right, I'm going to show you a quick little picture of him. Share screen. No, I would do a tab. There we go. That's Don Decker. So visualize this in your mind as I tell you this story. Right. So, Don Decker of Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, claims that for a brief period of time he was able to materialize rain out of thin air. and he basically made it rain indoors.
He's like Rain Man.
Yeah, he's like Rain Man, but not with the autism and stuff.
No.
So basically, this was in 1983. In February 1983, Don Dicker was serving time in prison. He was on a 12-month sentence for possession of stolen goods, or handling stolen
That wasn't a
goods.
shower, was it? Because to make it rain, he had a little portable shower with him.
No, Jamie, it wasn't a shower.
Hey, don't know.
Please come back, Danielle. All is forgiven. Yeah, so he's in prison for 12 months for receiving stolen goods, and I assume he knew they were stolen goods because he didn't accidentally just buy something. And then that'd be a bit shitty, getting put in prison for a year, not knowing you'd bought something that was stolen. Anyway, so while he's in prison, in February of 1983, his grandfather died, and he was allowed leave from prison to go out because he wasn't a dangerous criminal or anything. He'd not harmed anybody. They let him get a release, a mini release, basically, to go to his grandfather's funeral. So off he goes to his grandfather's funeral. It was a bit bittersweet for him because what nobody knew at the time was that his grandfather had been very abusive to him during his childhood. So he's there, he's watching all his family grieve. He's got mixed emotions, obviously. I don't want to say he was glad he was dead, but I mean, you can't really grieve for the man. His grandfather had died of cirrhosis of the liver, which indicates that he had a bit of an alcohol problem. So, yeah. But he's at the funeral, and for some reason, after the funeral, he doesn't go to stay with his family. He goes to spend, because he's got a couple of days out of prison. Why he went to it? I mean, I wouldn't have went. Would you have went? I wouldn't have went, even if it was a family member and they were abusive to me. I wouldn't have went. Anyway, he goes to the funeral. Afterwards, he goes to stay with friends for the next couple of days until he's got to go back to prison. So,
it's all rather casual, isn't it?
Yeah. Obviously, he's not got any guards or anything with him. He's just free and he's got to go back on after the weekend's up, whatever. So, what's his friend's name? Let me just... can't remember. I'll find it. So he's staying with his friends. I'll tell you their name in a minute because this is...
we'll call them Bert and Ernie for now.
Well, one of them was a woman.
Oh.
So
Bernadette and Ernie.
Right. So he's staying with Bernadette and Ernie, apparently. And he goes up to the bathroom while he's washing his hands after whatever. He sees a vision in the mirror of an old man with a crown on his head, just staring at him. And he feels like this is evil.
Crown on his head?
I don't know why it's got a crown on its head. And it's not his grandfather, it's just an old man. He didn't say it was his grandfather. So he sees this vision in the mirror. And when he comes downstairs, his two friends that he's staying with, the Coffers, they're called the Coffers. They're in Ann Street, that's the name of the street. The Coffers' house is on Ann Street. He comes downstairs and they said that he come down and it was like he was in a little bit of a daze. And he's sitting there and basically water starts pissing down the walls. And they're like, what the fuck? So they try to figure out what this is. This is a rental property, so they get in touch with the landlord of the property, because obviously there's water.
See if there's plumbing issue, I guess.
Obviously, that's your first thing. Get the landlord, get this sorted, it's going to ruin all my furniture, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Get in touch with the landlord, and the landlord comes, this is in the lounge of the house, and he's like, well, there's no water pipes anywhere near here, so I can't even explain where this is coming from. And at this sort of same time, the water's not just coming down the walls, it's also going vertically and horizontally across the room and going like in all directions, just droplets of water. And the landlord starts freaking out. He's like, what
you would, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, just running off the wall somewhere, a little bit of wet, you think, oh, there's some problem coming, issue going on there. But when it's coming across the room,
the water's going in all directions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like completely unexplainable, weird. Now, for some reason, they decide, well, I don't know, It seems bizarre to me, but then who would you phone? So they found the police.
Ghostbusters.
I mean, I don't know if the police would be my first thought. Maybe a priest would probably be, yeah. But they found the police.
Something.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose there's not like in the front of your old phone book, 1983, an emergency, like phone the police, phone an ambulance. There's nothing like if it starts, water starts just flying about your house in all directions, phone this number. No, there's nothing like that. So they found the police, and 2 police officers turn up, and they witness this as well, and the rain's flying towards them, and it's like what the fuck? And they just can't figure it out, and it's very difficult to ascertain the timeline here. Whether this all happened on the same evening or if some of it happened the next day. But at some point, the 2 friends that he was staying with and Don decide to go across the street to a pizza restaurant to get some dinner, and the police are still in the house investigating. And they go across the road, and when Don leaves that house to go across the road, it stops. All the water just stops. There's nothing's happening. He goes into the restaurant, and the woman at the restaurant had apparently at some point been in the house because there'd been no commotion and everything, seen the police turn up, and she'd seen the water in the house. So he's sitting there, and she says that Don looked like he was in a trance in the restaurant. And then it started raining in the restaurant as well.
Yeah.
So the first thing she does is she goes to the cash register and gets a cross, because
what else?
Apparently that's where you keep your cross in the cash register. And she puts it against his skin. And both she and him said that it burned him. How she would know it burned him. I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
It burned him. And obviously she's like, get the fuck out of my fucking restaurant. You're soaking the place.
You're soaking my pizzas.
Soggy pizzas. Fuck off. So he leaves and he goes back across the road to his friend's house. And starts raining in there again. And this is where I don't know what the timeline is. These 2 police officers have gone back to the station at some point. I can't figure out the timeline. And they've told the chief. And they've asked him because they don't know what to do. They don't know what it is. So
he obviously thought it was nonsense.
Yeah. So they get the chief, and he comes out and he says that this isn't, just don't talk about this. This is not, it's just a plumbing issue.
Yeah.
Don't talk about it.
Don't talk wet. No. Anyway.
I miss Danielle.
He was drenched in paperwork.
He wasn't drenched in paperwork.
Yeah, but XP said there's a movie called Dark Water. Yeah, we mentioned that when we did.
So the police comes out and bring the chief, but he's not having it. He don't want to believe it's like anything weird. At this point, they're starting to think that it's demonic and he's possessed by a demon or a ghost or whatever, and they start shouting at him. The women start shouting at him because obviously
you would be getting a bit annoyed, wouldn't you? Like,
he's wrecking your fucking house. All your fucking furniture's soaking. Your fucking walls are dripping with water. Like, you're obviously doing this. Would you fucking stop it?
I'd be like, stand outside and water the garden. Do something useful with your time.
Don't water my plants.
Yeah.
They get annoyed at him and they start having a go. The women, and I assume when it says the women, that is the wife of his friend. And I don't know if Pizza Women's come or who the other woman is. Whatever. And when they start having a go at him, he apparently starts levitating and flying around the room.
Oh my god.
Like, what the fuck's going on? Like, whatever, yeah. And this apparently goes on and off all weekend. Because they let him continue staying all weekend. I'd have flung him the fuck out of my house. I'm sorry. Like, yeah, look, I understand. Like, yeah, your mum ate, and you've had you're going through a very traumatic time. Your grandfather who abused you just died and shit. But you're wrecking my house. Fuck off.
And now you're floating about the place.
Yeah, now you're just like, floating about you're freaking everybody out.
Go sort yourself
My
out.
fucking sofa's soaking. Fuck off. But no, he stays all weekend. Eventually, by the end of the weekend, it's calmed down, and then he goes back to prison. And by this time, obviously, it's been happening over and over, on and off, and he's convinced that he's got the power to control water. So he decides to, when he's back in prison, he shows his cellmate that he can control water, and he makes it rain in his cell. And his cellmate freaks the fuck out.
Yeah, you would, wouldn't you?
And gets the guards and demands to be moved away from him because he's possessed by a demon. And the guards are like, this is bullshit. He can't control water. What are you on about? And he's like, yes, I can control water. He says, well, prove it then. I'm going to take you to the warden's office. Make it rain. So the prison guard takes him to the warden's office, and apparently he made it rain in there because all of a sudden the warden's shirt was wet. I don't know.
Sweat.
Maybe he was very sweaty, I don't know. But I mean, they didn't actually say they saw rain. They just suddenly his shirt was wet.
I think it was in the UK, wasn't it?
No, it was in
Was it?
Pennsylvania.
Oh, right, because I think I saw a recreation in the 80s, and that was sort of like
It was
a
in
police officer
Pennsylvania.
which sounded very English, so...
Yeah. So we've got Don Decker. He's obviously going through a very traumatic experience at the time. His grandfather's just died, so he has got some degree of grief. He probably did have some feeling towards him. He's also probably a little bit relieved as well if he was abused by this man. So he's got some depression, maybe got some mental health issues, but mental health issues don't describe why there's water pissing about and why he's floating about the fucking house and everything.
Floating about the house and everything.
That goes way beyond any mental health issue that I've ever heard of. So we've got him, but then we've also got his two friends, well, his friend that he was staying with and the wife, the woman for the pizza shop. We've got the first initial two police officers. Wait a minute, I'm lost in count. Right. Two friends. Pizza woman. First two police officers, that's 5.
Yeah.
The chief, that's 6. Another 2 police officers that came the next day, that's 8. The cellmate, that's 9. The prison guard, that's at least 10, because I don't know if there was more than one. And the governor. So there's 11 witnesses to this. At least 11 people witnessed this.
Yeah.
And they're not all dodgy criminals.
They're all from different sort of backgrounds, I suppose.
Police officers that didn't know Don Decker at all.
Yeah.
They got no reason to lie. So it's weird.
That is weird.
And I don't know what's going on, but I don't think it's a lot of skeptics will say, well, he obviously had mental health issues. Well, a lot of people's got mental health issues, but they're not fucking making it rain indoors, are they?
No. I do remember hearing this story.
Oh, and the landlord. There's another one. The landlord. And the landlord's wife. That's probably where our woman was, actually, because his wife was there.
Yeah.
They were called Von Howe, which is a really cool name, by the way.
That sounds like they're going to hunt vampires or something.
Uh-huh.
Mind you, if he was possessed, that'd be quite a good name.
He did actually get a priest to come out and do an exorcism on him.
Yeah. And apparently, did they get a plumber? Because I know that they said there weren't no pipes in that room. And that's just one of the things what skeptics would say. Would
I've
be
not
like,
actually
it's
read
just a
that
leaky
they
pipe.
got a plumber, because the landlord, it's his house, he's saying there's no pipes. What's the point in getting a plumber? But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, we're not going to go. We don't believe you.
See, the skeptics' explanation is stupid, because yes, he maybe did have some mental health issues going on at the time, but that does not explain why he's floating about the place and it's fucking raining on people's sofas.
Did the exorcism work?
Well, apparently he started jerking about the place and that, but that was they actually got a priest to come out during that weekend, so they thought it worked, but then he done it again when he went back to prison. So no, obviously not.
I don't know if there's been any.
But he actually believes, Don Decker believes, that his grandfather, who had abused him all those years, that was him coming back to do it
again,
inflict this upon him to further make him suffer, even after he died.
It's weird.
Although he didn't say it was his granddad in the mirror with the crown on, he just said it was an evil-looking old man.
With a crown. See, that's weird. That is strange. That's a really strange aspect, isn't it?
So it's weird.
Well, that's all weird, but I mean that is a bit.
And it's never been explained. And that was 1983. So that's 40 years ago. Never been explained.
Any updates on that?
No. Nothing. Oh, I think he was arrested again in 2012 or something for arson.
Setting fire.
Yeah.
Well, why would he be caught for arson? He could do all that. He just
could have just put the fire out.
Fire out again.
Rain. Yeah. So he got arrested for arson. But we knew he was a criminal anyway, so it didn't matter, do it? Yeah. So that's one of the... See, if we'd just done this, that'd be us finished, and then it'll be 26 minutes, and we'd never hear the end of it from Jamie's dad. Never. So that's the first mini mystery. What do you think? Do you think that maybe the landlord was wrong? He just didn't realise that there was a pipe running there, but then why was it raining in the pizza shop as well? And And the governor, although they didn't actually say in the governor's office that they actually seen water coming anywhere, they just
said his shirt was
that his
wet.
shirt was suddenly wet.
But he might have just like dribbled his tea down his
Yeah, he
top
might have
of-
just like splashed himself when he was like washing his hands or something and didn't realise. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. That's weird.
It is weird though, because
It's
it's
confusing.
different locations
I think
and different witnesses that are not connected to each other and have got no reason to lie. Apart from the police chief who says, no, there's nothing to see here, but...
if it was just as him and his friends, you would say, yeah, that sounds a bit suspect. But because there was, like you say, the police officers involved, that does make it sound a bit more credible, should we say, but it's still unusual. And I don't know, that sort of went from one place to another as well, like with the cross and burning. And unfortunately,
apparently what I forgot, actually, just remembered me. When the police officers, after they got the chief and then they got these other two police officers to come, because obviously they told people, even though the chief's like, don't talk about it, it's stupid, don't tell anybody, they're still like, they know that they've seen something weird, so they told the other officers at the station. And another two of their mates had come to the house and seen it raining. And what they'd done, which is weird, I mean, it's probably not in the training manual for when you go in the police force, I would imagine. They put a brown paper bag over Don Decker's head so he couldn't see.
But why a brown one? That's going to get wet.
I don't know. They put a brown paper bag over his head so he couldn't see. And then they put a crucifix in his hand so that he couldn't see that there was a crucifix getting put on his hand, and he said it was burning him. But did they try different things, or did they just put a cross in his hand and it's like, oh, that burns? Or did they try to trick him like with other things? It's not a cross.
I was going to say, because of the cross, he would probably felt that was cross-shaped, wouldn't he?
I don't know.
I don't know. It seemed a bit weird.
I don't know. But that's the case of the Rain Man, or some people call him Rain Boy, but he's not a boy, so I'm going to call it Rain Man.
Yeah.
Don Decker.
Don Decker.
Was it his granddad coming back for last little psychological abuse on him?
Yeah.
Or was just the landlord stupid and didn't realise where his pipes are in his own house?
Still
But
doesn't
then
explain the
you've got
floating
pizza
around.
restaurant. I don't know. Anyway. Case number 2. I'm going to go all the way back to the year 1518, everybody. I remember it well. Dancing sickness. Have you heard of dancing sickness? Yeah, the dog's kicking my chair. Every time. Dancing sickness. So in 1518, this actually started off with one person. Are you going to go and let him out?
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's going to start barking in a minute. And I'll tell you about dancing sickness.
Yeah, you tell them about dancing six.
So-
So I'll dance the dog to the...
Told you. I knew it. Right. So in July of 1518, a woman who was called Fran Troffea, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's Troffea. So Fran Troffea, or Mrs. Troffea, just stepped out into the street and she started dancing. As you do. Probably, I don't know if this was normal in 1518, but she just walked out her house and just started dancing. And she seemed unable to stop. She just kept dancing and dancing and dancing until she collapsed from exhaustion. But then after she'd rested for a little while, she just got back up and she continued dancing some more, which is weird. I mean, it is weird. You'd obviously think maybe she's got a little mental health problem going on, but it didn't stop there. Because she continued doing this for days and days and days, but within a week, more than 30 other people from the surrounding area joined in, and they were like they were possessed, and they couldn't stop dancing. They're just dancing and dancing and dancing, and they kept going. They were getting injured. They were getting like leg injuries, back injuries, because they were like just physically exerting themselves 24 hours a day until they collapsed, and then they got a little bit of rest, and they got up and they kept dancing again, kept going, and the authorities in the city were apparently alarmed by this, obviously, and it just grew and grew and grew. The actual officials in the city moved them out of the street, like, so, I don't know, corralled them in some way and put them in this one area, and they actually got musicians to, I don't know why they decided, oh, they're dancing, we might as well have some music. They got musicians to play to accompany them, which is like, really? Really? Is that necessary? There's obviously something weird going on. You don't need to get the fucking musicians out, but that's what they done. And it ended up that there was as many as 400 people just dancing constantly in this city for no reason. They had music now, I suppose. Anyway, 400 people. And a lot of them, it doesn't actually say, there's historical records to this, but a number of them died because they overexerted themselves and they just died of exhaustion. And then by early September, the actual dance mania began to settle down until it stopped. So in 1518, it was quite thoroughly documented, and it was the last of quite a few similar outbreaks that had been throughout Europe between the 10th and the 16th century. This wasn't the only one, but it was the biggest one. But it was the last one. There's been no other ones documented anyway. And there was one in 1374 that was that spread through several towns along the Rhine River. So there's been contemporary. There's been modern explanations for what's caused this, because it's like still in the history books. There's quite a lot of documented evidence about it. And oh, he's back.
Hello, I'm back.
Yeah, he knows because I told him earlier. So investigators in the 20th century suggested that they might have consumed bread made from rye flour contaminated with fungal disease. So why they thought that like eating dodgy bread is going to make you dance yourself to death, I have no idea.
Right.
Obviously, it's not something that's happened again, because that was the last. It happened a few times between the 10th and the 16th century, but it's not happened again since. So where they get, rye bread, fungus, that's what happened. I don't know. Other people have suggested that it's some sort of demonic possession. There also was a theory that it was overheated blood, which is just like, what? What?
Strange. So,
anyway, basically, they ain't got a fucking clue, so they're just making a little shit up, basically.
Yeah.
Like, the blood must be overheated, so they've just decided to dance it off. Because that sounds like it really happened. Yeah, so the most widely accepted theory was from American medical historian called John Waller, who laid out in several papers. He wrote several papers about this. Maybe he was bored, I don't know. Seems like a quite a extensive amount of effort to put into something that happened like 500 years ago, but whatever. And he decided that it was a mass psychogenic disorder.
Oh, right.
So,
kind of like when they say mass hypnosis when somebody sees an alien.
So he said that such outbreaks take place under circumstances of extreme stress and generally take the form based on local fears. And in the case of the dancing plague of 1518, Waller cited a series of famines that were going on in the area and diseases that were around, such as smallpox and syphilis, and stressing factors that were going on in Strasbourg at the time. He further also maintained that there was a local belief that those who failed to propitiate St. Vitius, who was a patron saint of epileptics and dancers, would be cursed with epileptic-type symptoms.
What?
But it doesn't say that they were fitting. And if indeed these 400 people in Strasbourg all suddenly developed epilepsy. Can you imagine, right? They just all suddenly developed epilepsy for some reason because something's caused it.
Mm.
How bad should they feel for just fucking getting the fucking violin out? Or they're all having epileptic fits.
Getting the violin.
They put them all in the one area and just played music. Well, if that was epilepsy, what a bunch of twats.
Look, the thing is, right? See, I know, like, yawning is contagious. People yawn. One
Dancing
yawn,
for like...
Yeah, and laughing
weeks
as well. I've heard about
until you
laughing
die.
where people couldn't stop laughing. Someone's died of laughter, isn't they? And things like that before.
Dancing until you die.
That's a bit different. Yeah, there's a bit sort of different sort of actions going on there. You've got to physically actually do the dance, consciously do the dance.
And if it was actual a medical condition, it was epilepsy, they mustn't have been very good dancers if they thought,
if they mistake,
they're dancing, I'm going to join in.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah, that apparently happened quite a few times in Europe up until that last one, biggest one. And it's not happened again. So was it some sort of disease of the central nervous system that was making them move like that and they couldn't stop? You do get things like cause... What's the word I need? What's the word I need?
What? I don't know.
Tremors and stuff.
Right.
There could have been something like that. I don't know. And maybe it was something that spread and that's why everybody ended up doing it. Maybe it was something in the food or the water.
You know, like today, like a lot of people on social media do them dares, and then everyone starts doing it and that, and they're bloody idiots eating all this sort of.
I know, you're not going to do it till you die, though, are you?
You know, some of these people have died by doing ridiculous things. So perhaps, yeah, it might have been some kind of herb drug, perhaps hallucination.
Yeah, they're all on drugs. That's what happened. Yeah, she solved it. That's that one. Look, it's been a mystery since 1536, but it was drugs.
Did anyone check the mushrooms they were eating? They picked that weekend. I don't know. I should imagine it was probably because it's got to be take you out of your mind to get you to dance. Because if you're in your head, you know when to stop. You know you've got the conscious ability.
But they were like passing out and then exhausted, and once they had a little bit of rest, they were just getting up and going at it again. Yeah. I don't know.
See where you got that Lyme's disease with the ticks, don't you? Which sort of paralyzes people. And things like that, so it could. I'm
not falling for the mouldy bread. It wouldn't. If it was mouldy bread, it would have happened again, over and over. That wouldn't have been the last time because there's still you still get mouldy bread. Right, so that's mystery number 2. Why did they dance themselves to death? I've got no bloody idea. But I really hope that they weren't having some sort of epileptic seizures and they just decided to play music and just watch them die.
Yeah, that'd be
tragic. The next one is about a woman called Gloria Ramirez. And you might have heard this one, you might not, but this one's weird and all.
Yeah.
Very weird.
Yeah, I know this one.
So this happened in 1994. So Gloria Cecilia Ramirez, she was born on the 11th of January 1963 in Riverside, California. And basically, something happened to her in 1994 and she was admitted to the emergency department. She had actual cervical cancer at the time and she'd become quite ill. So they'd found an ambulance, paramedics, if you're in America, and they came and they took her to the emergency room. And while they're treating her in the emergency room, several of the hospital workers fainted for no reason. And then others started experiencing really weird symptoms like shortness of breath and muscle spasms. And actual 5 of the ER staff had to be hospitalized themselves.
Yeah.
And one of them actually ended up in an intensive care unit for 2 weeks just because he was treating her. So basically, shortly after she arrived at the hospital, she died from complications. She died from complications arising from her cervical cancer that she had. And initially, as they always come out with, the reason that these people were fainting and the reason that these people ended up being hospitalized were like very well trained, like nurses, medical doctors, hospital staff. It was called mass hysteria. Yeah. They were just being hysterical.
Well,
really? They've been hysterical.
Didn't they also say to some people like, because I think, if I remember rightly, some of the people who got sick were sent home.
Uh-huh.
And I think others then started to, and they're saying, they're just, just because their pals have got sent home, they thought, we'll try this one on and we'll get sent home as well. But I don't know.
So straight away, mass hysteria, there's nothing wrong with you, you're just all copying each other. One person fainted, the rest of them just all went a bit loopy. But, I mean, somebody was in intensive care for 2 weeks. That's not just mass hysteria. Yeah. So when she was actually admitted to the hospital, she was suffering from severe heart palpitations and she had tachycardia and something called Chine-Stokes respiration, which I don't know what that is. Do you want me to look it up for you? Abnormal pattern of breathing characterized by progressively deeper and sometimes faster breathing followed by a gradual decrease. This results in a temporary stop in breathing called an apnea, like sleep apnea sort of thing.
Right.
So she had weird breathing. The medical staff injected her with diazepam, midazolam, and lorazepam in order to sedate her. When it became clear that she was responding poorly to that treatment, the staff tried to defibrillate her heart. And it was at that point when they used a defibrillator that the medical workers saw an oily substance covering her entire body. There was a sheen over her skin and it was oily to the touch, which is weird. Anyway, and a lot of them said that they noticed a fruity garlic-type odour that was emanating from her body, but more particularly coming from her mouth as well. The registered nurse, Susan Kine, who drew blood from her, noticed an ammonia-like smell coming from the tube after she drew blood from her.
Mm.
So she passed the tube to another woman, a medical resident called Julie Gorczynski, who noticed manila-coloured, such yellow-brown particles floating inside the blood. So she actually saw these weird yellow-brown particles floating in the blood. At this point, Kane, who was the nurse that drew blood, fainted, and she was removed from the room. Shortly thereafter, Gorczynski began to feel nauseated. Complaining she was lightheaded, she also left the trauma room and sat at a nurse's desk. A staff member asked if she was okay, but before she could respond, she fainted. So Maureen Welch, who was a respiratory therapist who was assisting in the trauma room, was the third person to pass out. The staff were then ordered to evacuate all of the emergency department patients into the parking lot outside, thinking that there was some sort of contagion or something, or like biological weapon. Over 23 people became ill and 5 of them were hospitalised. A skeleton crew had actually stayed behind to stabilise Ramirez, and at 8:50, 45 minutes of CPR and defibrillation later, she was pronounced dead from kidney failure related to her cancer. But it was only with a skeleton crew. Everybody else was cleared out of the whole emergency department because they obviously thought there was something with this oily substance on her skin, people passing out. Like, what the fuck's going on? So the county health department called in California's Department of Health and Human Services, which put 2 scientists, Dr. Anna Maria Osario and Kirsten Waller, on the case. They interviewed 34 hospital staff who had been working in the emergency department on that day, the 19th of February, and using a standardised questionnaire, they done that. They found that people who had developed severe symptoms, such as loss of consciousness, severe symptoms such as loss of consciousness, shortness of breath, and muscle spasms, tended to have certain things in common. People who had worked within 2 feet of Ramirez and handled her intravenous lines had been at very high risk. But other factors that correlated with severe symptoms did not appear to match a scenario in which fumes had been released. The survey found that those afflicted tended to be women rather than men, and they all had normal blood tests after their exposure. They believed, therefore, that the hospital workers were suffering from mass hysteria, which is bullshit. That's bullshit.
I think I know what happened, and that's not silly. I think what could have happened, because my dad mentioned she could have been abducted, and when you think about it, there's a radiation, isn't there? Mm-hmm. And she got some kind of cancer. I don't know the time difference between when she got diagnosis and treatment and things like that. But let's just put it hypothetically. Perhaps she got abducted, had sort of radiation poisoning, and that got into her system. And that's why when they withdrew liquids through her, that's when they started to get sick and things like that. You don't know, do you? Because you don't know how it affects people in weird ways. I mean, yeah. I actually think something like that could have happened, but I don't know. But I don't know about the oily substance and the garlic. I mean,
yeah. And this bit's weird. So, like, the Riverside Coroner's Office contacted a place called Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in order to investigate the incident. And this laboratory postulated They're just postulating. So basically,
which they always
they're
do,
just
yeah.
guessing. This is a guess,
Yeah.
right? That Ramirez had been using dimethyl sulfoxide, DMSO, a solvent used as a powerful degreaser as a home remedy for pain.
What?
Why would you just guess that that's what happened?
Is that why she was all oily? Because she'd rubbed herself and did
Anyway.
Okay.
It's sold in a gel form at hardware stores, and there was a oily substance on her body. Apparently, it would explain, obviously, the greasy substance, and they theorised that DMSO in her system might have built up owing to a urinary blockage, which caused her kidney failure. Not her cancer that she'd been suffering from. This random thing that they're just guessing, they've got no evidence of, but they just decided this is what happened. But no. They've not even found any in her house or nothing. They're just like, yeah, you can buy that was oily. That would maybe fit the symptoms a little bit. So, yeah. Maybe she self-treated herself.
Well, it's fair enough. Like I say, if they've got to try and work out like everybody else, and there's no clues, and it is quite random. I'm sure they probably have, part of an investigation, see what this was about.
Partly their theory. The oxygen that was administered by the paramedics apparently would have combined with the DMSO to form dimethyl sulfone, which is known to crystallize at room temperature. The crystals were observed in some of her blood, and that's
right. So that would.
It's like they're trying to they've got all these things
justify.
Like, what can we make fit into
everything.
this all? Even though we've got no evidence that she'd done this, but we're just going to decide that she'd done this. Maybe they knew that she'd had this substance because maybe somebody had done something to her and they were just trying to explain it away.
Yeah.
Anyway, electric shocks administered during defibrillation could then have converted the now DMSO2, the sulfone, into dimethyl sulfate, a highly toxic dimethyl ether of sulfuric acid, exposure to which could have caused some of the reported symptoms in emergency room staff. So it's a really random thing to decide that somebody would have self-treated themselves. Really random thing that requires the oxygen and then it requires the electricity to transform it into this thing. It's going to put all this shit together.
They got everything covered.
So how did
a house full of all different items.
It's like they knew what the substance was, but how could they explain away the fact that it was in her body?
Yeah, they can explain every step of the way afterwards. Yeah. This is what
we need an excuse for why it's in her body. All right, well you can buy a certain form at a hardware store, but it's got to be changed. But we'll just maybe she self-treated herself.
That's bizarre.
I don't know.
I don't know. Something suspicious, I think. There, it could be some kind of testing. Could have been something accidentally done by somebody in there to explain it away.
Our family completely disagrees with that theory, by the way. Our family's like, no, she didn't do that. But apparently, according to the autopsy, and they've gone with what this lab says, this is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Probably. With no evidence.
Yeah, it's too convenient. All of that, every step of the way, they could explain every sort of step as it proceeded.
Yeah, you need all of these things.
This thing.
The only one that she could have possibly got a hold of from a hardware store needed all these very specific things to happen to it for it to turn into the thing
to do this, that, and everything. Yeah.
Cause an emergency and hospitalize people and put people in intensive care.
Mm-hmm. Out of all them different things that she had in her house, or
I think somebody because you do. I mean, there's shit going on. There's shit going on in America. I mean, look what they've done with MK Ultra. They were giving people LSD. They were giving people loads of bullshit without their knowledge. Maybe they gave her something without her knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's why they knew exactly what the substance was.
Or perhaps that was an experimental treatment for a cancer. We don't know, again, the sort of timeline. Perhaps they previously
If it was an experimental treatment, they just said.
Well, they admit to that because they might have thought, oh, we're going to come out with that later, but obviously they didn't.
Weird that they knew exactly the thing that needed all these steps.
Yeah. Conveniently.
Anyway,
yeah.
I think they've been experimenting on people again.
Yeah. And,
without their knowledge.
Yeah. Aliens is a possibility, even if you believe in
aliens is always a possibility.
We've always got to include aliens. Come on, it's got to be in everything. Possession, we could say possession as well, like the other one. The other one could, make water and float around the place.
I don't think she was self-treating herself with a random thing that she bought for a hardware store.
Yeah.
Right? If she was that against conventional medicine, that she was self-treating herself with a random oil that she'd got from B&Q, or the American equivalent of B&Q, was it House, Lowe's, whatever? Why would she phone an ambulance when she got out? Wouldn't you just go down to the hardware store and what else can I try?
Was it because she was against taking medical? So they got to make a scary story up from home using home remedies or natural remedies. So they did something to say you shouldn't go, rummage around your cupboards and go buy other expensive tablets and medicines. You never know, do you?
Maybe.
Anyway.
Because Big Pharma's not innocent either. No. And the final mini mystery for today happened in 1954. I'm going to have a little drink first before I tell you all about it. And there's nothing in there that I got for B&Q, just in case anything happens. Right. So,
was there any connection to the Clintons? Probably.
Yeah, there was a connection.
Every week, yeah.
There was a connection to the Clintons, Kelly.
There was. We had a pizza store at the other one, but pizza this one.
Mm-hmm. You're not allowed to.
But she did smell like garlic.
You're not allowed to say anything about pizza.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah. It was in America, so it was the Clintons. Right.
Yeah.
So, on a hot summer's day in July of 1954, a man arrived at Haneda Airport in Tokyo. For all intents and purposes, he was perfectly normal, unremarkable, just a normal man travelling through the airport, whether it's recreationally or on business, just like everybody else. He was a Caucasian man, he had a beard, he was wearing a suit, and he may or may not have spoken French. Obviously, they are assuming that he was speaking French. Maybe the people that interacted with him didn't speak French, but they thought it sounded like French. I wouldn't particularly know. Was that French or Spanish? I don't know. Anyway, he may or may not have spoken French. He also knew a fair bit of Japanese, so he obviously communicated with them in Japanese because he's in Japan. Nothing bizarre there, and that is until he handed them his passport. Then it all went a bit weird. So, the passport looked, for all intents and purposes, perfectly legitimate. It was issued, however, in the country of Taured, Taured. And they were like, what?
Where's that?
Where the fuck is that? Never heard of that one. As far as the immigration officers at Haneda Airport were aware, this country didn't exist. Maybe they were wrong though. I don't know. They asked him about it, and he was getting frustrated. He's like, what are you on about? Taured. I'm for Taured. What are you on about? He even got my map. And he's like, show us. I mean, maybe we're wrong here. Maybe it's a really small country, and we just haven't heard of it. Like, shout, where is it? And he's looking at the map, and he's getting really frustrated because it's not fucking there. And he's like, is this some sort of joke? It's like, it should be here.
Everything else.
He's pointing to where it should be, but there's nothing there. And he's thinking, are you winding me up here? What's weird?
So he was just as freaked out as they were. Cause
he was getting freaked out.
You wouldn't.
So, obviously, the Japanese officials are suspicious. They're thinking,
he's up to no good.
He's up to something. Is he a spy? Is he a criminal? We need to investigate this because this is fucking weird.
Is he an alien?
So they put him in a hotel room that was attached to the airport for the night in order for them to investigate, and they stationed 2 guards outside his room to make sure that he didn't fucking escape and go off because they wanted to know what he was up to. Which, I mean, if he was a criminal, he wouldn't have been a very good criminal because why would you use a country that doesn't exist? I mean, just put France. Nobody would have noticed. You've made them notice by putting a country that doesn't exist. Anyway, they put him in this hotel room, 2 guards at the door, and the next morning, officers went to the hotel room to speak to him. Obviously, they couldn't let him leave the airport, so that's why he's in, because if he'd done that, he'd actually have entered the country. There's something about, like, if you stay in the airport, you've not actually entered the country. Anyway, they go to the hotel room, which I believe was on the 6th floor. It might have been the 4th floor. I can't remember. It was either the 4th or the 6th floor. And they go to speak to him, and he's gone. He's not there. He completely vanished. Now, the guards that were guarding the door are like, well, he's not fucking left. What are you on about? There was windows in his room, obviously, but it was like 4 to 6 stories up. There's no way he jumped in.
He is an alien.
He's just gone. Completely vanished without a trace. So, the man for Torrid.
Now, here we go. Now, there's loads of possibilities that could have happened here. First of all, he could have been some kind of secret agent, as we said. So, obviously, the Torrid thing is a bit unusual because he might just said a different country, but whatever. He could have been. Could he have been? Oh, he could have been a man in black.
Well,
you never know. Or he could have been an alien. We'll go with alien every time. Or he might have been from an alternative universe.
Well, you've got like alternative universe, or he could have been for the future. Maybe in the future, there is somewhere called Torrid.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of strange because you imagine that sort of thing.
But
it's like everyone forget about you and that.
He actually told them prior to this that he was there on business, and they told him the name of the company that he worked for.
Yeah.
And the name of the place that he was going and he told them the hotel he'd booked in Japan, which existed. They told him the name of the company that he was going, because he had a meeting at this company, and with the person he had a meeting with. And they contacted the hotel, and there was no reservation for him.
No.
And they contacted the company, and that person did exist within that company, but there was no meeting set up.
That person did exist.
Mm-hmm.
So the people. So there's a lot of things what cross, like again, like the Mandela effect, where some people see things.
But they're like, well, no, we've got no meeting. They didn't know anything to do with the company because obviously Torrid doesn't exist. So this company in Torrid doesn't exist. But yeah. So was he some sort of time traveler? Did he come from a parallel universe? Did he slip into this dimension and then slip back?
Or did he, bump his head and got confused himself? Or it's kind of strange. And
yeah, apparently, like, when he was showing the map, he pointed to like the area, sort of round about Andorra, France, Spain, and said, "Well, it should be here. It's not there."
Yeah. Did he have anything like on him, evidence-wise, like to prove that he was from these places?
Well, he had his passport, didn't he?
Just the passport.
He obviously had his documents. Yeah, his passport was like stamped that he'd been all over the world.
Right. Oh. What about?
And that's what looked all legit, apart from the fact that it said he was for Torrid.
That's weird. So he did. Yeah. So there was some evidence. It weren't just like, he's just claiming that he was.
It wasn't like a brand new passport. He'd been quite widely travelled. I mean, he'd been to all the different European countries. He said he'd been to Tokyo several times before. That's why he spoke the language. He also said that he stayed at that hotel that he had reservations at before. He always went to that hotel. That hotel did exist.
I remember,
no reservation.
There's been stories similar to this before. There's that woman, which that was quite suspicious.
She got stuck though, didn't she?
No, the woman that was turned out. I think she was a secret agent because she was up in her room in the hotel room and everything. She had ordered a meal and everything and disappeared or something, and all they found was shoes or something. But I think they think she was a sort of some kind of spy. But that was similar sort of thing where there was that man in the library. There was a library. This man in this library, and he took this person down to this library, and that weren't there anymore. That had changed, and reality had changed, and things like that. And he was explaining himself because again, he was confused and lost. But I think he was in the modern day, and he went down this road and ended up in little older sort of time period and things like that. And then he came back again.
There is another case, and I believe it was on one of the Robert Stack Unsolved Mystery programs. There was a woman, I don't know her name, I just remember this case, that had a very similar experience to this Manta Torrid thing, but she didn't go. She was stuck. So she'd woke up one morning in her bed, but it was weird because she was in an apartment that she'd moved out of months before. It still had all her furniture and shit in it, but she's in this apartment, and she's lying beside her as her ex-partner, who she split up with, and that's why she'd moved. No. So she's with her ex-partner, and he seems to think that they're still in a relationship.
Still everything's there was.
But she's been moved out for months. She's completely confused by this. Like, what the fuck's going on? And for like one thing, what reason or another, she decides, I'm going to work. I need to sort my head out. I can't stay here. I'm going to work. So she goes to her place of work, and it's completely exactly the same. But the department that she thinks she works in, she doesn't work in that department. And they're like, no, you work in this department. You've always worked in this department. And she's like, no, fucking not. Yeah, and it's all fucking weird.
That'd be freaky.
Now, apparently, she'd left this partner for, I don't know, I might have said the reason. Months before they had shared this apartment, she'd moved into a new apartment, and she'd actually met a new partner in her reality, and she was in a new relationship. But this person didn't even know where she was in this new reality. She didn't obviously want to be with it because something had happened. This relationship had broken down with this bloke, and he didn't know why. It was like, but as far as he was concerned, his relationship was fine. But like, she's like, no. But she was stuck there, and she was working for the same company, but she was doing a job that she didn't know how to do.
Yeah.
And she was stuck, and she still to this day claims that she's stuck in the wrong reality. She just woke up one morning, and she'd moved. And everything was very similar, but there was differences, and
slight differences,
and it's not her life.
There's actually another one I saw when this the peak of this Mandela effect. There was another woman who was coming on doing short YouTube videos, and she was in hysterics as well. She said, "I don't know what's going on. I really can't. This is really doing my brain in. I'm getting really, really, scared, fearful." She said, "My husband is not my husband. My children are not my children. I don't know. I don't belong here. I don't know what's going on." And she was crying on camera. Now, again, she might be having a mental breakdown, whatever, but she done series of them, and she was saying there's things like she was explaining things in her life that was how it was. It was very similar, but there was loads of slight different changes, and it was really scaring her and freaking her out. Like some people who may have passed away were still alive, and things like that, and people that she was friends with, she's no longer friends with, and things like that. And really slight changes that was really freaking her out. And that came out. She was doing a series. I don't know what it was called because I was just looking at everything near the Mandela effect sort of peak period because that was interesting to me, and she was one. And there was that other guy. Remember that other guy who just was fixing his sink or something? He went into a parallel universe through the cupboard, and he even took a photograph of his alternative self or something. Probably totally rubbish. They had the same tattoo, similar look, and that. Skeptics say though he's with his father and things like that, and they got the same tattoo, and they're just making up a story. I don't know, but that was really bizarre. He was fixing the sink, and there was a little tunnel in there, and he ended up in a different universe or something. But
right, for just remembering off the top of my head, I got a couple of details wrong on that story. It was actually the partner that she was with. She'd been split up with for years, and she'd been with her current partner for 7 years. But in this reality, he doesn't exist at all.
Oh,
so the one that she was with was an ex-partner for years ago. So that is, her name is Lerina, Lerina Garcia Gordo. So Lerina Garcia Gordo. So if you want to look more into that case, weird.
I do think
that happened in 2008.
Yeah, I do think there is sort of some.
That would be weird. Can you imagine just waking up one morning and like an ex that you had years and years ago, was lying in bed beside you, and you're like, "Where's Lisa?" And you look me up, and I've never existed. I don't exist. Would you think you'd gone mental?
That'd be quite scary.
You'd think you'd gone fucking mental, wouldn't you?
I've had I've had sort of bizarre dreams like that where people don't know you and things like that. That's scary. You imagine it, or you don't know them, or you imagine waking up and you're in a house of people that is basically strangers or people that you do know, but from different sort of situations, and you're like, that was, my neighbour. Oh, look, who's there? Talking about people going missing. There's someone in the chat who's been missing.
Is it Danielle?
That might be. That might be an imposter from an alternative universe. We don't know.
Yeah, Danielle, do you know where we are?
Yeah. Are you okay?
Are you being probed, Danielle?
Yeah.
Do
you smell like garlic and oil? Yeah, don't answer that one because that's quite scary.
That's her name, XP.
Right.
Lorena Garcia Gordo. You ought to look that up and get the proper version and not the one that I'm remembering from watching something like 10 years ago. Yeah. So, yeah. And
that was
that was mini mysteries. That might not be. I'm going to have to call it mini mysteries now. I'll take her name off now because I'm sure you got the point. And we will be back. I don't know, Danielle. When will we be back? Are we doing Friday, Danielle? Can you do Friday, Danielle? Because we miss you, and or we're going to have to come back on Tuesday.
Yeah, we'll have to work that out.
We'll have to work it out. I definitely want to do Tuesday for Halloween because Halloween falls on a Tuesday.
Does it?
And I want to do a spooky story, a really spooky story on Halloween. So at least that one's going to be on Tuesday.
What, like campfire stories, or you got one in the sort of?
Maybe we can all tell a little story.
We could actually tell real ghost stories from our past or something, or spooky stories. That would be kind of weird.
I know, but it's nice to have you here live as well. We'll talk to Danielle anyway, and we'll find out.
Yeah.
Definitely going to do Tuesday for Halloween. Until then, we'll just play it by ear and see what's going on. Anyway, that was some mini mysteries. I've got some left, so we're going to have to do this again. Because I didn't know how long they were going to take. So I have got some left.
No, I don't. Hopefully Danielle's not been taken by the Clintons. I'm sure she's not.
I bloody hope not.
No. I'm sure she'd take action if one of them tried to grab her. And I'm losing my internet again. So you can hear me, but look, look. That happened to me a minute ago.
We better go before he loses his internet.
You might actually soon. Cause
maybe they can't even hear neither of us because we've both lost our internet and we're just talking to ourselves.
Oh, we're in alternative reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So take care of yourselves. Have a little think about these cases and let us know what you think happened, or if there's any other ones that are similar that you want us to look into for future episodes. Let us know in the comments, and we will see you at some point next week, hopefully with Danielle Alvis, unless she gets abducted again.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope not, because I miss her, because I need the Michigan mood ring, and
which is a little mystery in itself.
Yeah. See you later, everybody.
See you later. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.